murdered 10 young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway.
It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
But no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I have caused.
In Los Angeles, a killer the police are calling the Hillside Strangler has murdered 10 young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway.
It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
But no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I have caused.
In Los Angeles, a killer the police are calling the Hillside Strangler has murdered 10 young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway.
It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
Hello there.
Oh man. Hiya.
Is it really hard to take me seriously in this thing?
No, I'm sure if you, if you're not prepared for what we're talking about today, you might be taken aback a bit.
I just want to touch my brain. So, before we get too far into this, if we just want to get a little confirmation on our audio, I think everything...
I think we're good. I turned on my laptop for a hot second.
Okay. Well, hello, and welcome to the Bad Taste Crime-Cast Quaren-Stream. I'm Vicky.
Yeah. Hi, Janelle.
Although it might not look like it right now.
Yeah. For real. Who are you?
If you didn't know, we are celebrating halfway to Halloween today.
Halfway to Halloween! I get spooky with it. Yes, that's why I'm wearing. I went light on the Halloween. I have my pumpkin dress on and my candy corn earrings.
It's cute, girl.
And a little decor in the background.
I love it. I just pulled this little thing out of the closet.
How many faces are in your closet, Vicky?
Literally, I was like, oh my god, what can I do? Because I just have so much stuff, like horror costume stuff around my house that it's like I have choices. And I was like, I still have not gotten a chance to wear this whole time that I've had it. This beautiful, gorgeous mask. I love it.
It's giving me a little Mrs. Doubtfire vibes.
Why, hello.
Especially the mouth. Oh my god, the mouth. It's great. I love that.
Fashion shoot.
Yes.
I just love this. I never get to dress up as somebody else for just a little bit, like ever. So this is so fun.
Yeah,
okay.
I thought about painting my face, but I was like, pump the brakes, girl. Because I had to do like a meeting today, and it was like a lot of stuff. I'm like, I can't show up in full makeup.
You should have showed up to your meeting in full.
I've been like, halfway to Halloween, how are you?
Don't worry about this. This is just how I celebrate in my household.
Yes, I mean, it's the quarantine times. It's the strange times, so expect it.
Yeah, true. If you've listened to our show before, you'll know we love Halloween. It's a big deal for us.
Big deal.
So we really wanted to do a little something to lift the spirits. And
the spirits.
Just got back from the Botox. Nice. So before we jump into our Halloween stuff, should we do a little news? I only got like 2 little short things.
Yes. Let's do it.
Also say for our viewers, I may disappear to take this off after a while, because it gets wicked hot. So hot.
Yeah. Well, you do haunted house stuff too.
Yes.
So I imagine that's why you lean towards prosthetic and not full mask. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Generally, that's what I do. Admittedly, this is a relic from my haunted house days. Something that was saved and has just been sitting in my basement waiting to be used. This was definitely a couple $100 purchase. I'm not sure how much it was, but it was a lot of. But it's gorgeous. Look at this.
It looks very realistic.
It's so pretty. I just love being creepy.
You know, that's our specialty here.
Okay, so
creepy and sassy.
For our news, we are going to start with one thing that I was sent by a friend of the show, Michael. This comes from last week. So on Friday, March 1st, I'm sorry, it's hard to see in this.
Oh no!
Well, I'm also not wearing my glasses, so I can't see far away. So, okay. Friday, May 1st, 45-year-old Charmaine Teague and her daughter were attempting to enter a Family Dollar in Flint, but they were stopped and asked to leave by security guards because they weren't wearing a mask. Which is almost required everywhere. Like, just about everywhere, I think. Michigan has been under an executive order from Governor Gretchen Whitmer requiring all customers and employees must wear face coverings inside grocery stores and other public places. So they were stopped and asked to leave by a security guard, 43-year-old Calvin Moonerlin, after he saw they weren't wearing a mask. There was an argument between the two of them, and Teague then left. Later, however, 2 men returned, 44-year-old Larry Teague and 23-year-old Ramonia Bishop. They came back with a gun and shot Teague in the head.
I mean, that's just a totally reasonable response, right?
Right, yeah. He obviously died from his injuries. Both men and Teague have been charged with first-degree premeditated murder and gun charges for the killing. It's just another case of, I think, anxieties running really high during this whole deal. Everybody just needs to take a deep breath and calm down.
Yeah, I definitely feel like people are using this to justify actions that they want to do in their everyday life but can't.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
So I'm not surprised. I'm surprised, actually, that we're not hearing more of this.
I know.
But then again, there was just a shooting yesterday of a jogger.
Yeah.
And then if you're watching all the absolutely ridiculous protests happening.
Oh, my God.
That are just like this culmination of all of these things together. It's like this weird conglomerate protest, like under the guise of anti-COVID regulations, but also like peppering in kind of like Semitic, all kinds of stuff. Like there's some really fascisty things happening in the streets.
Yeah, it's pretty wild out there.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy to stay at home.
Oh God, I got an itch on my head now.
Which head?
I just had to go scratch. It was like I can't reach it.
Just tap it out. It's
fine. So our other story is an update on the Lori Loughlin case.
Yikes!
I think this whole thing has kind of dropped off the radar a little bit because of. There's been so
because first world problems,
right? And honestly, there's been so many scandals that have happened since the college admissions scandal. It's like not as important, obviously. I mean, it's still important, but not top of everybody's mind.
I mean, college is a racket, so we all.
Right, yeah. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick update because I happened to see this today. So just a reminder, as most people know or knew at one time when everybody was paying attention, Lori Loughlin is being charged for her involvement in what has kind of just been dubbed the college admissions scandal. I
can't wait for the Lifetime movie.
I know. It's gonna be good.
It's coming.
Could they get her to play herself? Is that
her daughter? Have her daughter play her? Oh my god! I just casted the shit out of that.
Yeah. So she has been alleged to have paid $500,000 to get both of her daughters into the University of Southern California. Today, a federal judge denied her motion to dismiss the charges. The motion claimed that the government had mishandled the investigation and had failed to turn over evidence, including an iPhone note that belonged to Rick Singer, who was the recruiter / mastermind of the whole thing.
Okay.
The court itself, in its decision, said, it seemed pretty satisfied with the actions that were taken by investigators, and that the missing notes, wasn't a willful, we're not going to include this evidence kind of a thing, but it was more an accident that they just hadn't included it. The judge also denied a request to have the recordings between Singer and various clients excluded from the trial. So, just a little update on that. I happened to see that pop across my newsfeed and thought, we haven't actually talked about this in a while. So,
yeah.
That's kind of what I got for today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm forgetting the other actress's name who also got in trouble, but I haven't heard anything about her.
And she had
her legal struggle.
So the Lori Loughlin is actually the second to be tried. The first pled guilty, and she received, I want to say, 15-day sentence and some sort of community service, so many hours of community service. But her actual sentence was only a 2-week, I think, jail time.
Weekend jail.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. It's so strange that they're just concentrating on her case when there was definitely, obviously there were a couple celebrities, but there was also a bunch more people who were involved that were not celebrities, so.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, college is not that hard to get into, okay?
It's really not. You just gotta do your work.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
And also going to a college with tons of accolades, it really doesn't matter.
No.
nobody gives a shit about where you went to college. They just want to know what you went to college for.
Right. Exactly.
And if you finished.
So that's all I got for today.
Okay. So, since it's halfway to Halloween-ish, I decided that maybe we should try to do, like, our top 5 horror movies, right? I wanted to go outside the realm of reality for a little bit.
Right.
Because I've been re-watching a lot of horror movies, and it's weird because, like, my Amazon Prime Video account was, like, suggesting a lot of horror films, and I'm like, do they know that it's halfway to Halloween? Is that why they keep, like, in the middle of May giving me, like, this extremely long list of horror films?
Yeah. It could be.
So, we're going to talk about our top 5 horror films, and then I have a fun little game.
Okay.
So, shall we start? You want to start with your number 5 pick for your top horror film? I know this is really hard, like, to choose just 5 and to even narrow it down.
Yes. So before we start, what I want to say is Janelle and I are both big fans of horror and the horror genre. It's very difficult for me to narrow it down to 5. And honestly, if you were to ask me tomorrow, my choices would probably be different. I went for more of the first things that I thought of when I thought about really starting to get into horror and kind of what my favorites
me too.
I will also say that I did not put mine in any particular order except for my number 1. My number 1 is my number 1. But the rest of these are just kind of in the top 5 in general.
Sweet.
Okay, so sorry, I gotta reopen my notes now. Okay. My top 5. Oh, yes. Okay. So I started my list off with something that is one of my all-time favorites, obviously, if it's on here. And that is the movie Ghost Ship.
I have it on DVD.
As do I. And this is when...
That's funny.
I think when I first started really getting into horror and horror effects and like that kind of thing, this was like one of the first movies that really, like, I watched over and over and over. Particularly because in the very opening of the movie, there's a great scene where all of the passengers and the crew, except for one little girl, get sliced in half by a wire. Which is like...
Yes.
And then all the halves just, like, slide off of each other. Oh, God.
Yes.
So good. It was so good.
It's mortifying, yes.
Yeah, and so this is, it's actually, I thought it was older, but it's actually from 2002.
Which, I mean, it's practically the 90s, right?
Basically.
I just remember the cover of the DVD case is like, I have the holographic one that is like the boat with the face in it.
Yes. Yeah. Such a good movie. So the whole premise is it's this crew that's coming to investigate the ship that was lost in like the 60s, and they get on board and some weird shit starts happening, and then you have a ghost ship. I mean, like, that's the premise.
And then a ghost ship.
I don't know necessarily if it was, like, widely regarded as an amazing movie by critics or not.
Yeah. I don't think it was.
I love it. There's something about it that I'm just like, ooh.
I distinctly remember that one because I also really liked the flashbacks.
Yes.
As well that they did, and the costuming of the older female characters. Of course, you gotta hit that vintage hot spot for me.
I'm gonna let you do your number 5, and in the meantime, awesome. I'm gonna take this shit off because I am already
remove your face.
Dying of I'm listening.
Perfect. I mean, it kind of goes with my number 5 pick because it's The Night of the Living Dead. Obviously, OG joint. 1963, lovely black and white. It's everything that I've always wanted in a movie. And there's a lot of places that film it for Halloween around here, and I always go every single year. That's my go-to, like, we're going to go watch an old horror flick. But it's just like the perfect kind of creepy, spooky thriller. And it's kind of like the beginning of special effects, like makeup-y kind of stuff becoming more mainstream. And of course, you have like the most classic line in all of horror. They're coming for you, Barbara. So like, how could you not put that on your list? It's just everything I love.
Sorry.
There's also, there's like a whole series of Night of the Living Dead, but that first one takes the cake.
It's true. Yeah. I will say I struggled to decide if I should put that on my list or not. There's a lot of these that I really struggled with, whether it was like actually in my top 10 or not. I'm sorry, not even top 10, top 5. I have a rotating top 10, but a lot of things are tied for that, you know.
Exactly.
Do you want to do your number 4? I'm trying to put my head back on its
Are you
head.
still trying to get your put your head back on?
I'm trying to deal with heads and putting faces on things.
That's fine. So my number 4 pick is, and a lot of people haven't really seen this one. It's a Rob Zombie film. It's The Lords of Salem. It's a really, really great film. It's actually my favorite Rob Zombie film. I might get some flack about that, but it involves a disc jockey, a female disc jockey. So there's a lot of like really great music in it, and it's obviously about witches, Lords of Salem. But there's this like thumping bass line that plays that kind of entrances her during the film, and every time I watch it, like I can feel that like bass line in like my heart. It like pulsates with your heartbeat. It's so creepy, like you can feel it. But that's like one of my favorite films of his, and I know that like The Devil's Rejects and all that get a lot of, you know, praise, but I really like this film, and not a lot of people have seen it. But I highly recommend it. I love it a lot.
Yeah, that's
really
actually
great.
That is one that I have not seen yet, and I've been wanting to see. I don't know that it necessarily. I think because of the success of things like Devil's Rejects, that Rob Zombie's films generally open to some sort of fanfare, and that one didn't have the same sort of like, oh my god.
He's released a couple, like he released another one more recently too that was like more lower key as well. Yeah. So there's not a whole lot that he does like in a more indie style, but that is definitely one of them. And I just, the music, the ambiance, the old ass witch stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It checks all my boxes.
Okay. I'm definitely going to have to check that. You know, I got quarantine time. I might as well check that one out while I'm in quarantine.
Do it.
Okay.
I like it so much I bought it on a DVD, and I don't buy DVDs.
Wow.
I know.
Okay. So my number 4, and I might also get a little bit of flack for this. I don't know that necessarily the movies I've picked are ones that the horror community considers like classics. But again, it's stuff that I enjoy.
Yeah, I don't lean towards a lot of the gory stuff. Like I like old school, kind of like more suspenseful thriller style. Yeah. And anything that's got like maybe a little sci-fi edge to it.
And I generally go towards things that are more like the paranormal, ghost, possession, or it's just absolute gore. Like it's just straight up gore. I think everything on here though is more on the like paranormal end of things. So this one came out in 2002. Was kind of a big deal, I think, when it came out. It is The Ring.
Okay, of course, yes. Classic.
So it just is like, it is one of these movies that I remember when I had watched it when I was younger, I was genuinely frightened of it. Like that, and I can't say that now, I think, just because of my age and, you know, knowing what goes into making these movies. But I was genuinely afraid of this movie, and it was so bizarre and creepy and weird, and like it was just a lot of really strange things, but it's also got this like mystery angle to it, because she is kind of like investigating and trying to figure out about this tape and this girl, and sort of, I mean, it, you know, like doing some investigative work. So I don't know if that's the reason. I will also say, when The Ring came out in the United States, it sort of like opened this gateway for American remakes of Japanese horror films, because right after that we had like The Grudge and like a whole bunch of stuff that was straight up remakes of Japanese. We all know Japan does horror way better, I think, than anybody does.
Japan and Korean actually has really great horror movies too, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But I liked that film too, because it had that sort of like suspenseful kind of aspect to it. But could you imagine making that now? Like, it wouldn't be a VHS tape, right? Like, how would you? Like, you couldn't capture that same feeling in present day, and that wasn't even that long ago.
No, it was like I said, it was like 2002, I think, is when they came out, and even then the VHS was dying, like at that point. So like, you know, I don't know, weird stuff. Anyway, number 3.
You want to go?
I'll go. Okay.
Go number 3.
My number 3. Yes. Okay. So these next two for me are really like, I would say probably in that first batch of horror movies that I watched when I was young. And I'm talking like 10, 11, 12, like somewhere in there. So this one, and I actually might get a lot of flack for this one too, is House on Haunted Hill, and not the...
Which one?
Not the original Vincent Price.
Not Vincent Price joint?
But
damn it.
I know, but the remake in 1999. Nothing to say there's wrong with the Vincent Price version. It's just not the one that I was at the time aware of. Like, Vincent Price wasn't in.
I almost put the Vincent Price version on my list.
And Vincent Price is amazing. Don't miss.
Oh my God, he's the most wonderful spooky daddy that I've always wanted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But this one in particular was just like, I don't know. I loved it. So if you don't know, it is a remake.
I remember that one too.
Yeah, it is a remake of a Vincent Price film that came out in the late 50s, early 60s, I want to say. The whole plot is this guy who is a amusement park mogul invites all of these people to come to this house, and they just have to survive the night, and they get $1 million. Like, that's the whole premise of it. But of course it's a creepy murder house with weird hauntings and lots of things that can kill you. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It just is good. It's just good.
Yeah, and that one had some pretty good effects, but also the original had really great effects for its time period.
Yeah, it did.
When the skeleton comes out of that pit in the basement, that was really good for 1950s.
Oh my gosh. And like, I remember in the 99 version, they have a scene. This is first, you just have things that stick out in your memory about these things from like the first time you watched them. They talk about this machine that they have where the idea is what makes a sane man crazy makes a crazy man sane. And it's this like, I don't know what you would call it. There's that type of photography where it's a spinning image that makes a moving picture.
Oh, a zoetrope. I just read about.
I knew you would know that, actually. I knew you would know that. And it's like you sit in this and there's just these images already passed. It was crazy. Like, that scene for me was like, okay, that's really fucking weird. That's really weird.
It is. Yeah. It is. That seems to be like a pretty common thing too in a lot of horror films, to have that kind of like flickering image scene.
Yes. Yeah. What's your number 3?
My number 3, I feel like all of mine except for my number 4 pick are like classic, as in the sense like they're old.
Yeah.
because hello.
True.
Mine is the 1982 John Carpenter film, The Thing.
Oh, nice.
I love John Carpenter films. They are spooky and wonderful.
Amen.
But this one in particular has like this weird twist to it that's super suspenseful. Of course, it has Kurt Russell, which another delicious daddy on my list.
Oh my gosh.
But it takes place in this like cold, dark tundra, and they come across this thing that, you know, kind of mimics. And the saddest part of the movie is when it mimics the dog, and they have to decide to kill it.
Aww.
And it's like, you know, like, oh God, don't kill a dog, but also the dog's like gonna shapeshift and murder you. So
yeah,
it's very much kind of like a new take on like the invasion of the body snatchers. And it's, I don't know, it's cold and dark and dreary, and it's just miserable. And I think that adds to the whole plot line. But I love John Carpenter films, and the special effects in it are great.
Yeah,
they are so great. And usually like 1980s special effects are a little cheesy, but this isn't cheesy. Like, this is like good special effects.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because we were talking about one of the directors I really struggled with deciding to include was Alfred Hitchcock, which I almost fully expect to see some Alfred Hitchcock on your list somewhere. I
wanted to, but I went back and forth. Like, that is such a suspense thriller that I don't know if I would put it in the horror genre necessarily, and my personal, you know, view of that.
And there is such a thin line between, you know what, I didn't either, because there is such a thin line between a psychological thriller and a horror movie. I mean, there is like psychological horror.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, but
and Tippi Hedren and all the things.
Yeah, one of the things that because I was talking to my mom about this, is that The Birds was one of the movies that, like, when she was younger, just terrified her.
Oh, yeah.
And so many actresses that worked with
Vertigo
Hitchcock are like...
And Rear View Window. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So many actresses that worked with Hitchcock are scarred for life because of the things that they did during
Tippi Hedren,
Yes. So, I don't know. But...
She became, like, a little reclusive after that because, like... they were throwing live birds at her. There's a really great film that kind of is a historical fiction about her filming the birds, and it's really great.
Yeah.
And I can't think of the name of it, but if you look up Alfred Hitchcock Tippi Hedren movie, you'll come across it. It's really great, and it just characterizes the struggle she went through filming that.
There was a really...
And she was a new actress, too. Like, she really hadn't been in anything either. Just, like, commercials.
There was a really great documentary about Alfred Hitchcock, and kind of the, shall we say, shenanigans that he pulled, which was a lot of, like, he was kind of a prankster. He was kind of an asshole.
Obsessive.
Did a lot of lying to his, like, The Birds was one of these things that he, I think, lied to her about either how many birds or when they were going to come, or if they were real, or like...
He told her they were going to be fake.
Yeah. So, fucking Alfred Hitchcock.
He was a little skeezy, to be honest.
But he made great films, is the thing.
You have to have the whole discussion, like, can you separate the man from his art?
Okay, so that was what? What was that?
That was number 3 for me, The Thing. The Thing.
Okay, do you want to do your number 2?
Sure. So we were just talking about Vincent Price, Ultimate Spooky Daddy. So my number 2 pick, because I love all of his films and he did amazing stuff, and it was hard to select something. But I just kept going through every single Vincent Price movie.
Oh my God.
But I really loved House of Wax, the 1953 House of Wax with Vincent Price in it.
Okay.
I
don't know that I'm familiar.
It had surprisingly good effects.
Yeah.
And the story's a little different than the House of Wax. obviously, that we're probably more accustomed to the newer one.
Yes, yeah.
But it is a fake wax museum style kind of people hanging out, and you would create people that he looks like, people he knew, but had the real skeletons underneath.
Yeah.
But it's really creepy. But I think like Vincent Price makes the film. You could put him in anything, and it would be fantastic.
Yes.
Even the bit part he had in Edward Scissorhands. Like, come on.
Yeah. True. He's such a.
That was my heart.
He is such a darling.
That mustache, that voice.
That mustache. Oh my god. House of Wax.
House of Wax.
That's what I haven't seen in ages.
He also did a bunch of renditions of Edgar Allan Poe stories. So I couldn't imagine anyone doing an Edgar Allan Poe story but Vincent Price.
Yeah, I could see that too. That's true. Edgar Allan Poe is that kind of special, like, he is one of my all-time favorite poets and writers. But I think it would take sort of a special kind of person to really capture the poetiness of it all. Okay, so we're getting down there.
No, I don't even know.
Number 2. So my number 2, again, when I was watching House on Haunted Hill, I would switch between House on Haunted Hill and this movie, which is from 1999. It is The Haunting.
Yes!
I love it. See, all ghosty kind of things. So it's actually a remake of a 1963 movie, but both of them are based on a book that I think a lot of people are familiar with now. It's called The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Now, The Haunting of Hill House was turned into a Netflix series that has gotten quite a lot of praise. I still have yet to watch it. It's on my...
I liked it.
Yeah. Good. It's still on my list of things to watch, and hopefully I might be a little ambitious and like try to get to all this stuff during quarantine. We'll see.
I mean, it was very long though, so
yeah. The series or the movie?
Yeah, the series was very long.
Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to talk about after this. We're gonna have to talk about what we're watching on our streaming services, by the way. Yes. But The Haunting, the whole story is, the premise is this woman, essentially, she's taking care of her ailing mother. Her mom dies. She gets booted from the house that her sister inherits, and she's an insomniac. She gets invited to basically participate in this sleep study that is happening at this sleep study. Yes. That is happening at this house. The whole deal with the house is the groundskeepers lock and unlock the gates at night and in the morning. And in the meantime, there's just like a bunch of freaky haunting shit that happens. One of the things that I remember is there is a giant, I mean, it's like, when I'm saying house, it's like this huge mansion, and they have this giant like living room with this massive, just absolutely massive fireplace, like huge. The fireplace
like the size of my house fireplace.
Yes, like probably the size of the garage that most people have is the size of this fireplace. And there's a scene where there's something that takes her to the fireplace, and she is digging in the ashes and finds bones. And then she like runs away from the fireplace, and the fireplace spews ash and bone everywhere, just like that's I love that scene. So good. There's so many good scenes in that movie.
Or the woodwork in her bed and around her bed in her bedroom where it comes to life. That always freaked me out, because it was like these children that were making these faces like they were scared because something was coming to get them. Mortified.
Yeah. Oh my god. The creepiness of it all is so creepy.
That had really good effects in it. That movie was really interesting.
for 99, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
This is making me want to go back and watch all these movies again now.
I know.
Because a lot of these...
I pulled out my classic horror movie box set that I have.
Yeah. A lot of these are movies, honestly, that I have not watched in a minute. Like, definitely. And I just packed away all of my DVDs and Blu-rays are all packed away because I basically use streaming services for anything I want to watch now, but I don't want to get rid of them either, so...
Exactly. Well, it's also too like because I was trying to find The Creature for the Black Lagoon to rewatch, and it wasn't on anything. And I'm like, I'm not paying $4 to watch this. And I'm like, oh my god, I remembered I have a DVD.
Right. I'm pretty sure that I have because I used to. Okay, so back in the day, this is story time. Back in the day when I was a younger Vicky, I worked at Walmart for a time. And I used to, because I worked at Walmart, they have tons of those 15, 10, 25 movie collections, 2 DVD sets of just trash horror, which I love, the garbage movies that are just really terrible, but are really good because of that. I love that stuff. And I think I have one that is all Alfred Hitchcock, but it's all sort of his lesser
B movies. Yeah.
It's nothing that was ever famous. There's not a single
Did you ever see the Alfred Hitchcock Hour?
No.
So that was a TV series akin to the Twilight Zone that he did. That was short stories. And that's really delightful.
Yeah. God, I should pull that out too. Do I have anything that would play a DVD? Yeah. I think I can still do that on the PlayStation.
I have a PlayStation. Yeah, that's what I watch on my phone.
I guess the old laptop can do it.
That's true. Mine actually doesn't have a disc reader, so.
Oh no.
Oops.
Oh my god. Okay, so number 1. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So I had a hard time picking this because I had this moment where I was remembering the first time I ever watched a horror film. And I was like, oh, that was Chucky. I remember that. And then I was like, no, wait. It wasn't Chucky. That's the one I remember because it scared me the most. But the very first horror film that I ever watched was The Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
And because my grandfather loved Lon Chaney and all of the old school, wonderful horror films. So I remembered The Bride of Frankenstein. I used to actually, so when we had our library in that old building that was, it looked like the Coliseum, that old building.
Yes, okay.
I would go and I would rent The Bride of Frankenstein. And at the time, I was really young and you had to have your parents' permission. And I was renting it so much that they stopped asking my mother for permission.
Oh my God.
This is a VHS tape, The Bride of Frankenstein. I was The Bride of Frankenstein 3 years in a row for Halloween when I was little.
That does not surprise me at all. At all.
I have an epic picture of me as the Bride of Frankenstein. My brother was the Wolf Man, and my other brother was the Invisible Man.
Oh my god!
And we went as classic horror film characters. It was great. That was just I have such great memories of that film, going to the library and checking it out, and then watching it with my grandpa. So I was
oh my gosh!
I love that movie so much.
I have memories of going to the public library and checking out the entire series of Monty Python's Flying Circus.
There you go. Libraries are wonderful. Don't let anyone ever tell you they're not.
It's true. I'm pretty sure you're only saying that because you work at a library, but you know what? The point
Libraries
still
and
stands.
museums. The 2 places where I work are wonderful.
Oh my god. So I really had to think about this again because there are so many that I'm I could definitely consider that. I wouldn't say I have a favorite necessarily. I would say this is probably one of my favorites. They're all equal as far as that's concerned. And there's definitely stuff I was originally going to include and didn't, and ended up to like.
I have like a honorable mentions list that I'm going to talk about.
yeah. So my number one today, this could change, but as of today, is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yes.
Which is like, there's so much about that movie, because I wouldn't necessarily say it's like in your face scary, but it's far more of like a psychological horror.
Yes, it's got a creepiness to it.
Yes, yeah, and it definitely has its moments. I mean, there's a scene where there's literally blood coming in, flowing into a hallway, and like the old grandma, like young woman, old grandma thing, and but it's far more unsettling, and just weird, and I think that's what makes it so good, is that it's because it's not just like I think. Okay, ready? Here's that. I'm gonna get on my horror soapbox for a minute.
Okay.
The issue I think with so many horror films now is it's all about the jump scare and the
first person. Boo!
Yeah, exactly. And there is definitely something to be said for things that are maybe not as in your face, things that are just sort of off. Having a really good soundtrack to a movie is so important, especially when you're talking about horror and setting the mood. You think
all the classic films, you know? Halloween.
I think you could look at horror movies from the last 10 years and the soundtracks are very similar. You hear a lot of the same noises and a lot of the same sound cues, and I think if you watch a lot of horror movies you'd pick up on it a little more, but it almost makes it not as fun to watch it because it's like, I hear this sound cue, I know X is gonna happen.
It's formulaic.
Yeah, and you didn't get that with movies of the time that were really kind of, I don't want to say edgy, but they were like weird. It was just fucking weird, like, which is almost the scariest thing.
Yeah,
is when something's just not quite right, and that's why I love it. That's why. Also, Jack Nicholson is fucking amazing.
Yeah. He's great.
Yeah. I still have yet to see Dr. Sleep.
I was going to say, have you seen that yet? Because I haven't either.
I have not seen Dr. Sleep, but I've heard very good things about it.
Yeah, I read the book. I mean, who doesn't love like a delicious Stephen King novel? But to be perfectly honest, I like his son's work more. Don't tell anyone, says the whole letter.
I will also say,
I really enjoyed.
I think part of the appeal, for me anyway, for being such a longtime fan of The Shining, is all of the lore surrounding Stanley Kubrick and the filming of his movies too. There's a lot of like conspiracy theory kind of things mixed in there, and like.
Well, and the actual place is also like, it's haunted in and of itself. So there's a lot of lore in that paranormal aspect. You can watch every ghost hunting show known to man that covers it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my number one.
Those are good choices. Yeah, I struggled because like you said, I wanted to include maybe some Alfred Hitchcock. And I also debated on whether to put The Craft on here because, again, like that, I don't see as something traditionally horror film. But that is like, that's my favorite movie of all time.
That does not.
That's like top 10 favorite movie of all time.
The Craft, Ferrugia Bulk. Yes. Yes, girl.
Yes. Everything has something, like, I have a lot of witchery on my list.
Oh my god.
And anything in black and white, you know. But I also I really like seedy kind of B horror films. I'm a big fan of Ed Wood, and I love all of his like creepy, weird movies. And I was like debating whether to put Ed Wood on here too. It's just like there's too much. Like Nosferatu, that was another one that I watched when I was little, because that was in that canon of like very old school horror movies.
Yeah.
And the whole lore behind Nosferatu, and Max Schrumpf, who was the guy who played Nosferatu, he like lost it. Yeah. There's a biopic that William Dafoe was in where he played Max Schrumpf, and it's great. But he got so into character, he didn't take his makeup off. He wouldn't come out during the day. Like, he embodied Nosferatu.
Wow. That's
so
wild.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah. Was there anything that you're like, I really should have put that on the list?
Yeah, I think I tended to go... One that I really struggled with was Devil Inside, and that is a full-on possession movie, but there's something about that movie that I just really love. But it is kind of this classic tale of, like, mom is possessed, girls trying to go to the Catholic Church to get an exorcism, Catholic Church is like, nah, and craziness ensues. But this is one of these movies that was like, when it came out, like, the critics didn't like it, general audiences hated it, like, nobody thought it was good. I love it. But I think I tended to, for this list at least, when you're talking horror, I decided not to include some of the things that were just, like, gory for the sake of being gory. As much as I love that shit, like... That is not, you know, necessarily good horror. It's just, like, kind of fun to watch from an effects standpoint.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes. I really enjoy that film. But it's also not one that I go back and watch so much because of the goriness of it.
Yeah.
But that one has an epically great soundtrack, and it's just... creepy in only the way that movie can be creepy. But I started thinking too about like films that you watched that were like traumatic for you. Have you like watched a horror film and you're like, I can't?
No.
Nothing.
No,
not a single one.
I am weird.
I had one.
See, this is why I think I ended up doing things like working in a haunted house and doing all of the horror makeup. I'm sure you guys have seen this picture behind me for the last like couple of weeks. You know, I mean, it's like, I think that's why I kind of got into it. It's because I don't really get like triggered necessarily, or like it doesn't like feed into something in me that really scares me.
Well, for me, like, I couldn't finish Human Centipede, and it wasn't because it was scary.
I was going to bring that up, because that is one of my all-time favorites, for real.
It wasn't because it was scary. It was because I was so disgusted. I didn't even, as soon as he explained what he was doing, I was like, no.
Yeah. So that's actually one.
There's something about, you know, someone shitting in someone's mouth that is just a no for me.
It's so bad. So... Human Centipede, I love. I absolutely love it. It's a lot for most people. I think for most people, it's a little too much, like you said. That is actually one that I struggled to.
I don't enjoy potty humor.
Yeah, I really struggled with whether or not to include that one, because again, it is kind of just like crazy and fucked up and gory for the sake of being crazy and fucked up and gory. But when you look at, the Human Centipede franchise to me is one of these things that's really interesting, because I have watched 1, 2, and 3. All by the third one, it's like I feel like they lost the thread here a little bit. So have you seen anything about 2 or 3? Everyone knows about the first one.
Oh yeah. And it turned me off so much. I was like, nah.
Human Centipede 2. And it's funny because they have the same actors come back. Like the guy who was the doctor in the first one, he comes back. I'm trying to remember if he was in the second one or not, but I know for sure he was in the third one. So, Human Centipede 1, crazy German doctor decides he wants to sew 3 people ass to mouth together.
Joseph Mengele style. Yep.
And create a human centipede. Plot of the first movie. Human Centipede 2.
Done.
Surrounds it's very meta. It surrounds a security guard who is watching Human Centipede 1 and decides he wants to do what he did in Human Centipede 1, except on a bigger scale. That's Human Centipede 2. And so he kidnaps these people and he puts them in a warehouse and he decides
a bigger scale? What, 4 people?
Just wait till Human Centipede 3. Human Centipede 3. The plot of Human Centipede 3 is essentially the warden, who is played by the German doctor in the first movie, of a prison, decides that the most cost-effective way to deal with his prisoners is to make a giant human centipede out of everybody in the prison. And literally has a giant circle of, this is what I'm saying, but the third one, they kind of lost the thread a little bit, but they have a giant circle, like, in the prison yard.
They're just gung-ho about sewing people ass to mouth.
Yep.
I can't, and I won't.
But this is why I kind of love it, is because the first one, honestly, like, I think it's a good movie. I think there's some substance there. The effects are really good. It's pretty fucked up. It's not for everybody. I get that. But by the third one, it's like, what are you even doing with this franchise? Where are you going?
They don't even know. They're like, how many more ways can we sew somebody ass to mouth?
I know. I'm glad they stopped at 3.
Oh my God.
I think if you watch the first one, it's worth watching 2 and 3. 2 is way harder to watch. In my personal opinion, it's way worse. Gore wise and grossness wise than the first or the third one, but there's something about all of them that I'm just like, I have a special place in my heart for Human Centipede.
Yeah, I couldn't. That was the one where I was like, no, anything to do with pooping into anybody's mouth. I'm sorry, it's not for me.
Now let me ask you, since we're talking about horror movies, how do you feel about and I think this is sort of a newer genre, like, and by new I mean within like the last 10 years or so, the horror comedy genre.
I love it.
Yeah.
I that's what we do. We do dark humor, and dark humor is amazing.
Yeah.
I know that Hereditary wasn't supposed to be funny, but it definitely had those moments where it's like, this is a joke, right?
But I'm thinking of things like Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a perfect example. Which I just love those guys. And recently,
the Evil Dead franchise. I mean, hello.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Yeah. I love this kind of blending. And maybe that's why we do this.
Bruce Campbell, girl.
But I did, and this is a perfect segue into our sort of like, what have we been watching little segment of the show. Recently, I watched Little Evil. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah.
It's so good, so funny. I love the idea that it is, first of all, the actors they have in it are great, but I just love the idea of a guy becoming a stepdad to the literal Antichrist. Like that. It's just such a great concept. It's so good.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love funny stuff. Like I like that whole blending of humor and horror. I think it's great. I actually just rewatched An American Werewolf in London. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Okay.
It's another film that has really great effects. And especially, so like, they're in London, they get lost in the moors. This guy's best friend gets shredded by a werewolf, and then he gets bit and becomes a werewolf. And he keeps seeing his friend in varying states of decay and a vision. And it's really great. It has some amazing effects in it, but it's also like it's creepy, but also that has that classic werewolf story. And I think that's what I always go back to. It's a classic Frankenstein werewolf story.
True. What else have you been watching? Have you been watching anything else?
I honestly was going through the horror movie list. I rewatched a couple of the ones on my classic box set. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman's on there. That's a really great movie. Nice. Wasp Woman. It's a lot of women turning into things or being blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
And then I rewatched Creature from the Black Lagoon. And for some reason, I don't know why, but they included Metropolis in this box set, and Metropolis is a dystopian, futuristic movie that's German, and it's silent, and it's wonderful, but I rewatched that too.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. So I just watched Little Evil. Oh, I started watching a series on Netflix called The Unabomber in His Own Words.
I watched that, yeah.
Not honestly a huge fan. It's a little... I mean, the content is there. Like, content-wise, if you want to know about this, that's all, like, it's there. The information is there. Mm-hmm. It's just a little boring. It's, like, not...
Yeah, 100% boring, yeah.
Yeah, I don't... The whole premise behind it is it's this... it's based on interview tapes with Ted Kaczynski, and the people around him who are investigating it are his friends or his, whatever, which is all great. It's fine. I don't know. It seems long. It seems kind of uninteresting. I'm just like really, I haven't been this underwhelmed with a true crime series in a minute. So
there was another one that came out, I think maybe it was after that. But it was basically just his brother and his brother's wife during the whole thing. And it was like 2 or 3 episodes, I think. The name's escaping me. But that one was far better. Because it was his brother talking about the struggle of having to turn him in. Mm-hmm. And his wife being like, that's him. And him being in denial, being like, no, I don't think that is him.
Yeah.
But it was.
I also just finished, oh my gosh. I'm going to preface this by saying I highly suggest this series, but it's a real downer. So you got to be prepared.
Isn't everything a downer currently?
Yeah. So I just finished watching Unbelievable, which is a series that centers around rape and rape cases, both from an investigative standpoint and from a victim standpoint. It's a fictionalized series. I think it might be based on a real story, though. But like I said, it is real depressing, so like be prepared for that. But it is super good. Like, I thought they did an amazing job to make it less CSI-y as far as the police work goes. Like, I think it was far more realistic to how actual police work happens, which is really slowly and not exciting and literally,
and sometimes not at all.
Yeah, exactly.
In the case of rape.
Exactly.
It just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I suggest that too to any of you guys, but it just was like, I was watching it for a while, because I think it's like an 8-episode series, but I had to take a break because it was just like
heavy.
Kind of, heavy, big time. Okay. You want to move on to your...
Let's play a game!
Am I going to have to think real hard?
Not too hard, I don't think. But then again, we have quarantine brain, so what does that mean?
Yeah, true.
So since it's halfway to Halloween, I thought we could do some serial killers as Halloween candy.
Okay. All right.
And for this one, I didn't pick anything weird or additional. I didn't concoct something. I picked like regular standard ass candy for these horrors.
Okay.
But you can tell me what your thoughts are and what candy they should be.
Oh, okay.
So I just have 5. I have to do short quickies here.
Okay.
And we're going to start off with a banger. We're going to start off with BTK Who is BTK as a Halloween candy?
Oh my god.
Find, torture, kill Dennis Rader.
Yes. Yeah, oh man. As a Halloween candy. My first thought was like a Kinder Egg, where it's like you got a little surprise inside, something on the outside, and then something totally different on the inside.
Basic ass outside, fucked up
crazy inside. Kinder Egg.
Kinder Egg. I like it. Okay. I debated between. Did you ever get the peanut butter chew candies that were in the wax wrappers that were orange and black?
Oh,
so it's
yes, but I avoided
them because I thought they were taffy consistency. So I was like, he's an old ass man candy, but then I was like red rope licorice because tying.
Okay, that makes sense.
So he's one of those, but like. The peanut butter candy I was leaning more towards because like it's just stuck to the roof of your mouth. It's like not really good. It's really chewy. It like breaks your fillings. It's just for old people. That's what I imagine BTK is.
No offense to anybody that actually likes that candy.
It doesn't even taste like fucking peanut butter, you liars. This is coming from someone who enjoys Necco wafers, so again.
Wow, talk about
I'm an elderly lady.
You are like a 90-year-old woman at heart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we used to get them and spit them at each other, so I mean, really. Let me just put you in, my childhood here. We used to projectile spit them at each other, so. Necco wafers. Okay, the next serial killer is Eileen Wuornos.
Ooh, boy.
Who is she as Halloween candy?
I would say it would have to be like a cinnamon candy, like a red hot.
Yeah.
I'm thinking because that woman was spicy.
Hot tamales?
She was spicy and a little fucking crazy. But I feel like a hot tamale or something was like. I feel like that is. I'm going with my gut here.
Yeah,
I'm like, she's kind of like
that might be better than mine. I don't know.
Oh,
so I was like the foot-long pixie stick because after having one of those, it's like you're methed out, and she gives me meth vibes. So I was like foot-long pixie stick, obviously.
Oh my god! Yeah,
I like the spicy hot tamale.
What, dude? That woman was spicy, if anything.
Yeah, she was something.
Yeah. Okay, I'm ready. See, I'm doing okay on this one.
You're doing good. Yeah,
I know serial killers and I know candy. Those are like two things I actually know about.
It's like the marriage that we always wanted. So the next one is Jerry Brudos, and if you're not familiar with Jerry Brudos, he was a killer who was very into like fetishizing feet. He was a necrophiliac, and he did a lot of cross-dressing. Mm-hmm. So I'll put that.
Okay. I'm
thinking... As Halloween candy.
This is a tougher one.
It's a hard one.
I would almost say, like, one of the... like those little... like the gummy hamburgers.
Okay, yeah.
Because they look like something they're not, right? They look like a hamburger, but it's actually candy.
I like it.
Right?
Yeah. That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my thinking outside of the box here.
I like that. I went with wax lips because you're like, oh, these are supposed to be edible, and they're not.
That's good. That's a good
They're nasty. And also it's got that like cross-dressing element, like everyone is wearing giant female red lips.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one. Wax lips. Oh my gosh.
Ugh. Did you ever used to get the wax bottles with the candy in it?
Yeah, the nickel nips. Is that what they were called? I'm pretty sure. I know that sounds
bad.
Or nick nip.
Nipply nips.
Please.
Nope.
I'm pretty sure. That's a what?
Those were another ones where we didn't eat it. We would just chew on it and spit at each other. Look, I had a very strange
nickel
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And we actually left them out on the sidewalk, too, to see if they would melt in the sun. Who am I?
What? Wait, say that again?
Yeah, because we were, like, leave them out in the sun on the sidewalk in the summer to see if they would melt.
See, we used to just, like, we would drink the little juice inside, and then you would just chew on the wax like gum.
Oh, yeah, we would never, ever actually eat the candy. We would, like, chew it, like, and pull like it was a real bottle cap. Like, ah!
Yeah,
we would, like, spit it at each other like it was a beer bottle cap. It's like,
like, you're so old.
I know. It's called being cultured, dear. All right, so the next one is Jeffrey Dahmer, sweetheart of Milwaukee.
Oh, man.
Who is he as Halloween candy?
I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer. I feel like... is there any candy that they make in a jar? Is that a thing? Like a...
those bug candies came in a jar.
Or like a... This one I would have to think about a little more, I think. Oh, man. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Well, I'll tell you what I picked, so maybe that'll help you a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Okay. I have an idea. But let me hear what you
did
picked.
you ever get the sweet tarts that were in the shape of bones?
Yes. Yeah. Sweet tarts
That's
is
what
actually
I picked.
one of my, I would say, of the like sugar candies, not like chocolate candies, but like the sugar candies. Sweet tarts is one of my top 3.
Yeah. So I said like he was the sweet tarts that were bone shaped.
Okay.
Those were amazing. Those actually came in something that was similar to a Kinder Egg. Like they originally came in a chocolate ball, and you have to crack it open, and then there are bones inside. Nice. But then they started selling them by themselves. But I was just like, wow, this is like a weird.
So I would probably
excavating your candy.
I would probably say for Jeffrey Dahmer a Sour Patch Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because it
kind of look zombie-like.
Yeah, but also because they look like boys, and because they're sort of like sweet in the beginning, but like then, oh man,
soon you drill into their brain and it
sweet
becomes
enough
sour.
to lure you back to his apartment, and then he just turns sour and decides to murder you.
Just decides to drill your brain and put a little Drano in there. That's fun. Drano for your thoughts. No, those horses.
Oh, Janelle.
All right, so my last serial killer as Halloween candy. We haven't actually brought him up at all, and I was like, why haven't I been talking about this guy? Ed Gein. Who is he as Halloween candy?
Fruit Leathers.
Really? Fruit Leathers. Nice. Nice.
Is that? Do I need more explanation than that?
No.
Okay.
No. I was struggling. This is the one that I struggled with the most because I was like, who is Ed Gein as Candy? And I was like, he's just actually like a good old boy from Wisconsin. So he's just some old fashioned Werthers, you know?
I could. Yep.
Just
that
simple.
sounds...
Just a simple man.
Yeah.
Who likes to turn women into lamps
and belts.
Werthers. The original.
Yeah, this is why I choose Fruit Leather. Like,
I know. Well, I know where you are because you couldn't say people leather.
Yes, also because they don't sell people leather as Halloween candy. Wait, do they?
Maybe they do. Jerky. Or I was gonna say he's like the person that gives out pennies. He's the pennies you get for Halloween.
Yeah. That, or he would make his own popcorn balls. That's, I don't know, maybe that's just a Midwest thing, but
Heck yeah.
In our little town, like that was so common. Like I would come back with
there was a lady actually
balls.
By me too, because I mean I lived in a neighborhood that was mostly young families, but there was one old lady who would make popcorn balls, and she had regular and she had popcorn balls with fucking candy corn in them. And I was like, give me the candy corn balls.
I don't want any part of that. Actually, Actually, when I was a kid,
oh my god, it was so good.
One of the families that live on the street that you live on now gave out popcorn balls.
Mm-hmm.
I still
it's
them.
Classic Midwest.
It really
popcorn
is.
balls.
It really is. Oh my god, that was
love
fun.
it.
I loved that.
Yeah,
I was actually.
I was going a little lighter. Yeah. I think I'm too good at making these games, so my humble opinion.
No, that's very good. I like that one.
That's all I got, man.
I think that's it for our Quaren-Stream this week. Thank you guys for joining us for halfway to Halloween. I really enjoyed celebrating. It was very nice to hang out with my
to Dawn. Yes.
Hang out with my friend here.
I thought about making some spooky treats. Every Halloween I make green colored sugar cookies with eyeball candies in them. It's really great. Lick it.
No. I know where this thing has been, and I will not lick it. It's nasty.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for joining us. We will be back in 1 week. I think we actually have our theme pick for next week, but we're not going to tell you yet. Until
surprise!
Surprise. Keep an eye out on our social media for any information regarding episode releases. Or do we have an episode coming? No, we had one come out last week. Check out our episode from last week.
Next week. Yeah. Next week we got one.
You can see it right here on the same YouTube channel. It's all here.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
we're doing the stuff, man.
We will be back with you next Friday and every Friday until our stay-at-home order is lifted. Because
stay inside. Because if you fuck up Halloween for me, I'm gonna come for you.
Oh my god, we both will. You'll get a visit from the BTC girls, and you will not like it.
Yeah, you're gonna get a BTC beat down if you don't stay inside.
But on that note, stay safe and stay healthy and have a great weekend. Bye, guys.
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween! Ah!
What they discovered upon their arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
But no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I have caused.
In Los Angeles, a killer the police are calling the Hillside Strangler has murdered 10 young women and left their bodies